A little bit of silence there, just as the lead in, giving you a chance to look at the screen, have a look at some numbers. We're right at the threshold here of peaking about 84. It clicks over and it will actually lose these frame rates, which we're sitting up around 80 frames a second using a frame doubler. Sort of what you want if you want to keep things smooth. We are trying to keep the 99th percentile above, I would say, 60. So this definitely works, but we've just raised the ambient temperature in the zone that we're in. We're currently sitting on, I guess, a comfortable day in the northern hemisphere, probably around 27, 28 degrees is ambient, and running the voltage settings that I'll give it a list to in the notes. We're actually over a large amount of time keeping it absolutely peaked at full power. So we're hitting that. Now it's a little bit beyond full power, a little bit not beyond full power. The numbers I've given are actually for a battery profile. What I find is that the same numbers when we're on wall have a little bit of headroom, and so the video card that normally sits at 1950 as its maximum speed is going up by about 7%, or a little bit on top of that. We'll see it hit 2100, 2150, and it's pretty consistent all the way up to 80, dare I say 88 degrees Celsius, but after 84 there is a jump. It must be about 86, and a thermal cut-in cuts, you just see it drop down to south of 30 frames a second, and I actually have to fully reboot the machine. It might be that the external, the HDMI add-on, the extender, which has got a USB out to a DAC, it's got a few things going on, and I think it gets a bit hot because after a reboot I sort of have to plug it back in again and bit by bit wake everything up. So I don't think this is peaking at 100%. What I noticed is when I was looking at the screen like this, that temperature was getting hot, and then once the camera started panning, it actually dropped a degree or two. So I think as part of that pan, there's bits that take it a bit easier than usual. Look, I really wish I could bring up an easy overlay just to show the numbers, but as the machine is sitting, I've got it in the heat vent of my DAC, trying to get the temperature to it as hot as possible. And yeah, I think it's just a little bit hard for me to reach it, but a bunch of cables going into it. So let's just have a look though. It should be at about 99% charge. It is set to not generate, not do fast charge while it's under heavy load, so it should just be trickle charging. But it does show that it's a 44 watts of use, so that's the DC output. It's just sitting on a little battery box, Bluetti hands-free one. I could actually pull wall power from it right now. I won't do that. But we would see that the battery in the Bluetti would be putting out on the DC. The only thing that's plugged in is the handheld. And so technically it's in a wall mode right now. If I was to pull the power from it, it would be in battery mode. So I'll just do that. It's already cut in front of the screen. Right. No more battery power for you. Okay, so proof of the pudding. The DC has dropped down to 0 watts. We should see our numbers now clock out at max 1955. And I would think that temperature should come down, but clearly the scene is peaking. This profile has been written for pushing maximum performance from battery, equal to what you would get on wall, so that you can take the show on the road and not feel that you're missing out on any frames. Now, separate to the video I did before this, which was for a profile with the memory clocked down at 6400, basically the easy to run in any temperature zone profile. But if you're not in a hot summer's day, if your ambient temperature is below 27 degrees Celsius, you can actually run this profile. It will rip through your battery a little bit quicker. I do find that running the RAM speed at full speed, the board itself raises by about 2 degrees Celsius, and there is a little bit of power that's lost to the RAM banks running a bit quicker, and that power is generally better put into having your video card just run a bit quicker. But if you're running it at max as you can get on battery, 1955 already, the only way to take your speed a bit higher is to have your memory clock running up at the faster speed. It will eat a little bit more power, you will run a little bit warmer, and as I say, there'll be a new profile. I'll give some numbers with this just to confirm these settings. Probably about an hour on battery, so it's not a long-lasting profile by any means. I think I had a 13 watt or a 15 watt profile, which would give me 2 hours and 20 minutes on, say, Skyrim running on battery, which I thought was pretty good. With frame rate's up around about that, but we are running the game with all the settings set to ultra. We've gone in and configured a few other things like anisotropy, just jamming everything we can, basically, making it as high res as possible. It's at 1920 by 1080, which is the native of this monitor. Normally, if I was running it on the device, that would be 1920 by 1200, and then you use the inbuilt upscaler to take it up to 2560 by 1600. And generally those frame rates then come down to hovering, pushing for about 60 is what we're looking for. If in your open world areas, you're going to get better frame rate than indoor areas. So I'll just run it there up. So by all means, this monitor is just used for me to, oh, I guess it drops the power a little bit, doesn't it? It's not now having to run the screen. But I haven't been benchmarking the battery runs with this external screen. I've actually just been benchmarking them directly. So just trying to keep it apples to apples every time I run. As you can see, we just hold here the top speed on the card the whole time. It drops down to 26 watts if need be, but it basically wants to hover up at 27 watts for the full amount of core clock capable when you're running at the enhanced memory speed. So a little bit of a separate tuning guide to the video before it. We're still getting all the same maximum frame rates as we would get on wall power, even running, in some cases, another 7 watts of power into the video chip. So this sort of is where I think the maximum numbers are. I've seen this here drop happily down to 80. These sequences, I'm familiar with their maximum frames, even if you give it a whole ton more power, and they're equal to what we're getting here. So this wouldn't be the same for all games, but certainly this, as an open world role-playing game, does push your RAM, does push the different aspects of your machine in ways that a lot of other games don't. A lot just lean heavily on the GPU, and just enough CPU needed to make the game work perfectly. Some will benefit with more CPU, and they'll actually scale your frame rate better if you've got a little bit more CPU, but there's really only a few handfuls of games like that. They're generally strategy type games in real time, traditionally, and so games with a lot of AI, I think of Dragon's Dogma 2 and Baldur's Gate 3, I think is the third act is a city sequence, so that they will push it a little bit harder. Oh, jumped off the pier. Alright, so we saw there a single frame low where it said 35, that would be the non-doubled frame rate. I find with this profile it basically never breaks that, so it just about always has the doubled frame rate up, and as we can see it sits pretty well, enough that there's headroom, so when you're actually running on the native screen you can hit 2560 by 1600. But I'll just chuck this video up as what I would say maximum are for your hot temperatures in the northern hemisphere at the moment. If your ambient is 28 degrees and above, you're probably better running your RAM speed at 6400 speed. It'll drop the board 2 degrees, gives you a little bit more headroom to have the clock boost, so you'll actually get the exact same frame rates generally, all the way up to about 25 watts. If you're playing north of 25 watts, you probably need the extra RAM speed to get to actually higher frame rate. But yeah, depending on whether you're in summer, depending on how quick you want to rip through that battery life, there are some optimal profiles out there that will let you ride somewhere in between. Alrighty, well wishes with. I hope we've covered a few important things here. Cheers.